Hello, my name is Tom and welcome back to my channel. I've just got back from work, so sorry if I look a bit frazzled. I've come on here today as a quick introduction. Tomorrow I'm going to be doing a 24-hour reading vlog. It's not a readathon, it's nothing official, not to my knowledge anyway. It's just something that I've decided to do myself. And the reason I've decided to do this is because I have an ARC to read. I was sent an e-ARC of this book, which unfortunately didn't work. But because I was planning on buying it anyway, I decided to pick up a copy. And it's quite a big book. And I'd like to get a good chunk of it done so that I can get my review ready for it, because it's already been released, so I'm already running a bit late. But the book that I'm going to be reading over the next 24 hours is Blood Island by M.L. Farr. This is such a big book. I know very little about this book. I just know the author. Although I haven't read any of his other books before, I do know of him. A few first impressions of the book. It is this Amazon matte cover, so the black is already covered with my fingerprints. I'm not the biggest fan of the cover. It's not really my style. It's just very nondescript. And speaking of nondescript, this is what the back says. Gladiator meets Squid Game. If you like your near-future dystopian fantasy with a hint of the past and a large dash of violence, jump in. A world that seems depressingly familiar. That's all it says. And this isn't an ARC copy. This is, unless I've somehow got the wrong one, this is a final copy. So the back really doesn't give you very much information. I would prefer perhaps some plot hints. I can infer that there's going to be some sort of death game and that there's a dystopian setting. Can you see the dog? Is the dog in frame? Come on. I think we're going to have dog in frame for a little bit. Okay, so we can infer that there's some sort of blood sport, and it's in a dystopian future of some description. Near future dystopian fantasy confuses me a little bit. I'm not sure what I'm going to get from that. And that's really why I wanted to get this book read. I'm really intrigued as to what it's actually about. And obviously, I need to get a review in for this one as well, because it was something that I was given as an ARC. I also finished my audiobook today whilst I was at work, so I get to start a new one for the reading day. So I think what I'm going to go with is Dune Messiah. I finished Dune in, was it January when I finished it? I think it was January. And I was going to say I really enjoyed it. I was really fascinated by it. The world is so intriguing and it's really in depth as well. And that's exactly what I like in my fantasy and in my sci-fi. There were some bits that were really confusing though. So I hope that the sequel will help to develop some of the bits that I liked and clear up some of the bits that I'm not too sure about. I don't know how much of the audiobook I'm going to get through, because I really want to focus on the physically reading. I don't have anything else too dramatic to get done either, so it's going to be a day where I can get a lot of reading in, hopefully. I do also need to finish editing the video that's going to come out this weekend as of filming. I think that's all I need to say for this bit, so I'll see you tomorrow and you'll see me in just a little bit. Good morning. I've come out into my car so that I can film without waking anyone up. Ooh, my morning voice. It's just about 1:30 and I've just got to the end of chapter 2, so I now sort of know what's going on. We are set in the UK and it's sort of a post-credit breakdown. All of the countries of the world have lent each other so much money that money is meaningless. So we're at the theoretical end of economy, and the 4 prime ministers of the countries of the United Kingdom have come together to sort out this problem. They've sought out our point of view character, who is Joe, because he has successfully run the last betting shop that's left in the UK, and they want his expertise. So we don't really know what the game is yet, but we do know that it is involving criminals and a small uninhabited Scottish island, and in some way, shape or form there is going to be betting involved. It's pretty much where I was reckoning that it was going to be in terms of what the story is actually about. The idea of the government-sponsored death game has been done quite a bit recently. It is a trope that I really like when it's done well, so I hope that I'll be able to really enjoy this book. I'm doing okay this morning. Waking up at midnight isn't unusual for me. I've been on earlies this week, so I've been waking up at midnight to go into work anyway, but I've only read 12 pages this morning, and I am feeling a bit groggy, so what I'm going to do is, seeing as this is the sort of time I'd usually leave for work anyway, I'm going to go for a quick drive. I'm going to listen to my audiobook, and I'm going to hope that that sort of refreshes me and wakes me up a bit more so that I can read a little bit quicker. The font is very small in this book, so I'm not going to be able to get through pages very quickly. But yeah, I probably won't do another update until people in the house start waking up, because I don't really want to be sat out here in my car again. It's very cold, and I thought the lighting would be better, seeing as there's a light right here, but it really isn't, so never mind. I'll see you a bit later on. Okay, it's just gone 8:10, and the morning rush has happened here. Everyone's gone to where they're going for the day, so I thought I'd use the quiet period to do an update. After my quick drive, I've been doing Pomodoro style reading sprints, but I was getting some eye fatigue from reading. I don't know whether it's because there wasn't any natural light yet, so I decided to alternate the sprints, reading the physical book and switch to my audiobook. I've only made about half hour's progress in the audiobook because I kept having to re-listen to bits. I think I listened to the first chapter about 3 times, just because there's so many new characters all of a sudden, and I was struggling to remember who everyone was. And the other thing that I have to admit is, during one of my audiobook sprints, I fell asleep. I don't know how I've managed this. I think I said in the car that I wake up at midnight for work anyway, so I don't know why I was so tired. I'm wondering whether it's because I haven't eaten anything yet. But yeah, I did fall asleep, and I think I've lost about 2 hours. So depending on how I feel, I may credit the hours later on, which would mean me staying up till 2 o'clock tomorrow morning, which isn't too unreasonable. However, usually when I'm on earlies and I'm up at midnight, I go to sleep about 4-5 o'clock. So me making it to the end of this reading challenge is going to be quite a bit of a struggle for me. But yeah, I'm feeling much more awake now. I'm going to make something to eat now. In the reading that I have got done, I've got to page 45 out of 673. My aim is not to finish this book specifically. I'm not doing anything like that. I want this to be a nice, relaxing, fun thing. I'm not going to be hard on myself if I don't read 25 pages an hour or something. I don't know. The font is pretty small in this book, and as I said, it was quite tiring on the eyes earlier. But as an update on what's happening in the book, we now have, is it 5 point of view characters? We have Joe, we have Adia, we have Brett, Bear, oh, and Sonia. But Sonia's only had one chapter, so I don't know whether she's going to be coming back. There are also 2 more that had 1 chapter, 2 brothers, but I can't remember their names. And all but one of those narrators is an employee of this death game contest. And it is very closely modelled after the Roman gladiatorial tradition, I suppose is the best way to put it. It's utilising the same gladiatorial types. So yeah, that's pretty much what I know in terms of plot. In terms of writing, some of the dialogue is a bit clunky. Every so often there's a line and it pulls me right out and I've got to read it a couple of times to work out what it's actually saying. But the writing is pretty clear and it's descriptive enough for me to form a picture of what's happening. And I like the angle that it's following predominantly people who are working on this game rather than the majority of other stories in this subgenre follow predominantly contestants. So I hope that sort of variation from the norm will prove to be quite interesting. But yeah, we're coming up on 8:30, so I'm going to make some food and then carry on reading. Alright, we've just passed midday, so the halfway point of the planned section of this reading vlog. Firstly, I want to mention I've just realised that I forgot to use my microphone for my previous talking sections, so I'm sorry if the audio was terrible. I'll do everything I can to sort that out. So, halfway update. I've just had lunch, so I was listening to my audiobook whilst I was doing that. I'm about an hour into it now. I'm still having to go back and re-listen to bits. But there's quite a big time gap between the end of the first book and the beginning of the second book in this series. So I'm getting sort of almost struck by events that have happened off screen. And some of them are pretty dramatic, so I'm sort of trying to digest them and also trying to work out what is important has proved quite difficult in Dune Messiah so far. It really isn't holding my attention as much as the last book did, and then the last book didn't hold my attention as much as other similar books have. So I am going to carry on with it today, but I am going to focus on getting some physical pages read. In terms of Blood Island, I am currently on page 61. So not as far as I would have liked to have been at this point, but honestly, if I can double that to 120, I'll be happy with today as a reading day. The two narrators that I weren't sure whether were recurring have come back. They are Kay and Effie. So by my counting, that means we have 7 point of view characters in this book, which is quite a lot. And we are changing perspectives quite readily. I say I'm on page 61, but I'm already at chapter 25. So the chapters are really short, and I don't think that there are 2 consecutive chapters that have been narrated by the same character so far. We are still getting into this world, especially in the last 10 or so pages. There's been a lot of learning about people's motivations, especially how people are planning to make money from these games. I am intrigued as to what is going to happen because there's a lot left of this book, and a lot of the setup's been pretty quick. So there's definitely a lot of time for it to play with my expectations, which is what I really hope it's going to do. For the next little bit of time, maybe the next hour or so, I am going to switch over to another book that I'm reading. This is Doctor Who Nuclear Time by Ollie Smith. I'm reading this for the Buzzword Reading Challenge this month. I should be a bit further through it than I am at the moment. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time getting some pages out of this one. So I'm currently on page 81, and I'll update you later in the afternoon about how far I've got. Alright, it's just gone 7:30 in the evening. I know I haven't updated you in a while. Quite a bit happened this afternoon. My grandparents visited for a bit, and I went out with the dogs. I think I've got some clips of that to show you. So basically I haven't done as much reading as I wanted to this afternoon. But that hasn't mean I've read nothing. I did pick up the Doctor Who book, and I read about 50 pages of that. I think it's quite telling that I read 50 pages of Nuclear Time in about an hour and a quarter, I think it was, and it's taken me most of the day to get to where I am with the other book. Speaking of, I'm about 70 pages in. I've just got to the first sort of gladiatorial game. It isn't written in a way that is easy for me to read. Practically, the font is really small, which is why I've started looking at chapters rather than pages, because even though I'm at about page 70, I've passed chapter 30, I think, if I remember correctly. So there are a lot of words on each page, and I am struggling with the dialogue. It is written in almost like a prose play script. It's a bit strange, and there's been a few points where a lot of people have been talking, and a couple of lines it hasn't been clear who was saying it. It hasn't been detrimental to my reading experience, and I'm still pretty engaged in the story. Because there are so many point of view characters. Oh, by the way, Sonia hasn't come back yet, so I think she was just one chapter, but I'll find out later on. So that's 6 point of view characters. Because there are so many, we're not learning very much about them. I would love for there to be a focus on maybe 3 or 4 and more development of their characters and more learning about them. This book is definitely plot, and it's definitely concept plot. There's a lot of discussion of the ideas behind what the book is talking about. But I do get the feeling that it's vamping up for something a bit different to happen, and hopefully that will happen soon. I would love to get to 100 pages before the end of the evening. I don't know whether that's going to be possible. I also don't know how likely it is that I'm going to be able to stay up till midnight, let alone carry on through to the hours that I lost earlier with my little impromptu nap. And I was going to include some of the hours that I didn't read this afternoon because of visitors, but that would mean 4 or 5 o'clock tomorrow morning, and I really don't think I can manage that. So I'm going to be very content if I can make it to midnight. And hopefully this book does something that's going to hook me. At the moment, although I am anticipating things happening, I am not especially intrigued. I'm sorry if you can hear snoring in the background. There is a sleepy dog. It's now 2 days later. Needless to say, things didn't go quite to plan. I will explain what happened. After my last clip, which was I think about 7:30, I went up to read in bed because I was getting cold. And I managed to keep going until about 9:30. At 9:30, it became pretty clear to me that I was losing my ability to read. It took me a good 5 minutes, if not more, to read one page. So I decided to switch over to my audiobook for a bit. And on doing that, I promptly fell asleep. So I think I ended up owing the readathon about 6 hours, if not a little bit more. And I was planning on making that up yesterday, but yesterday ended up being really busy. So I've decided to call it. I'm leaving the 24-hour readathon where it is. So that just leaves me with wrapping up what I managed to get through in the 24 hours. Firstly, I got through 2.5 hours of my audiobook, which was Dune Messiah. I don't feel ready to comment on my thoughts about that yet because it is still getting going. There's been a lot of establishing what happened between the first book and this book. So the events of this book haven't really got going yet. I am a little bit concerned that it's going to suffer from having middle book problems, even though it is the second book of 12. And because it is a lot shorter than the other books, I'm concerned that it is just going to be setting up for book 3. But I am still intrigued to know what happens. The Dune universe is very fascinating to me. And because it is quite short, I'm hoping that I can get through it relatively quickly. Now, quickly about the second book that I picked up. Nuclear Time by Ollie Smith. This is one of the Doctor Who books. I won't be talking about this in depth now because I'll talk about it in one of my wrap-ups. I did manage to read 52 pages from this book, and seeing as I was only reading it for about an hour and a quarter throughout the day, I think that speaks to how easy a read this is, and it is very pleasant. I'm hoping to be able to finish this in the next couple of days. I am really enjoying it. And then on to the big book that I decided to pick up, Blood Island by M.L. Farr, and it is now horrifically covered in my fingerprints. I made less progress than I was hoping to on this, but the whole point of the 24 hours was to be nice and relaxing, so I didn't want to hold myself to any page goals or anything specific, just that I am aware that I need to get a review in for this book. I made it to page 83, which is the end of chapter... Oh, that's Roman numerals. I think that's chapter 39. Just out of interest, how many chapters are in this book? So we have 673 pages. And if I'm reading these Roman numerals correctly, I think it's 277 chapters. 83 pages doesn't feel like a lot, which is why I'm looking at it in terms of chapters, because there are a lot of words on every page of this book. We haven't got very far into the plot yet, and not all that much has happened yet. We're still really setting up. I just got to the first sort of round of the game. There are so many point of view characters. And thinking of it, there are 3 that I would cut. And I wouldn't usually say that, but I think if I were to rewrite this book, I would take out those 3 characters. 2 of which are really annoying and seem to serve only to give us one bit of world building, and it really seems like they should have done that and then gone away, but they haven't gone away yet, and it doesn't help that I just don't like them. And then there is another character, we're getting his internal perspective, but we're also getting quite a bit of how other characters see him from the outside, and usually I'd love that. The problem is that we're getting no different information from any of those perspectives. His internal voice is giving us very much the same impression. Merlin, are you alright? His internal voice is giving us very much the same impression as their external voices. So there isn't all that much to be learnt from having him as a point of view. I hope that changes. And at the moment, the majority of the point of view characters are in the same location. So hopefully they'll spread out and they'll be able to give us a wider view on this world. But yeah, as I said, I'm not very far into the action yet. It hasn't even really started building that much tension yet. I've mentioned that I need to write a review for this one. I do not feel that I am far enough in to even begin thinking about it. But I am going to put it down for a couple of days. I think I'm going to finish the Doctor Who book. Before I carry on with this. I'm definitely interested to see where it's going. It does suffer a bit mechanically. As I've mentioned, the pages, just the layout isn't very ergonomic. The layout isn't very ergonomic for me specifically, and I think I said in an earlier vlog that some of the dialogue is a bit clunky. I have come across a couple of typos. They don't really affect me as a reader. I tend to just read straight through them. I think because I quite like reading self-published fiction, and there is a tendency for more inaccuracies than in a published book, but I don't really see that as a problem. What is a problem is that some of the grammar and punctuation use means that I'm going back and reading a sentence 3 or 4 times to try and work out what it means. I don't know whether it's wrong. I'm not that good at writing to know whether or not it's wrong, but it isn't how I would have approached it, and it is taking me out of the action. It is meaning that I'm having to double back quite a bit. And it is a shame because on paper, this book is my book. It has a lot of tropes that I really enjoy. I'm really, really, really hoping that this book picks up a bit. And it is a shame because this is the first ever arc that I've received. This is the first time I've been asked to be a reviewer. And I did know that it was going to take me a while to read just because of the size of it, but it does seem like the mechanics of this book are going to keep me slowed down. So, for this 24-hour readathon, I have 135 pages read and 2.5 hours listened to, which I think is not that bad, especially seeing as I did lose a bit of time. It was a really nice experience. I had such a good day doing this, and I'd had a week of long shifts at work, and yes, I was tired, but you know what, I woke up yesterday feeling really relaxed. I do wish I'd started with this book. I think if I had, I would have read a lot more pages, but these are both books that I'm looking forward to finishing now, which is great. And yeah, I think that's all I've got for you today. If you liked this video, please consider liking it, and if you want to see more from me, perhaps subscribe. I have absolutely no idea how long it's going to take for me to edit this video, so hopefully it won't be too late. And let me know down in the comments, are you going to try Blood Island? Does it sound like it would be interesting to you? Have you already read it? What do you think of it? Thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll see you again soon. Okay, how long is that clip? 23 minutes.